You are watching Time Team News. Does that work?
Perfect. Thank you very much. Welcome to Time Team News, your monthly dose of archaeology news and discoveries from Britain and across the globe. 30 years on from Time Team's first episode back in 1994. And 2024 promises to be an extremely exciting year for Time Team. First up, a story that takes us right back to the Roman conquest of Britain. An incredibly rare 2,000-year-old Roman auxiliary cavalry helmet has been put on display in Leicestershire alongside associated finds and replicas. The helmet was originally found back in the year 2000 following the discovery of a silver ear by the Hallaton Fieldwork Group. The helmet has an interesting reconstruction story. When it was first discovered, it was heavily corroded and broken into many tiny fragments. So archaeologists block lifted it from the ground and encased it in plaster so it could be excavated back in the lab. It was then painstakingly reassembled like an intricate 3D jigsaw puzzle. The helmet underwent an incredible 9-year conservation programme at the British Museum, revealing decorative motifs of animals and human figures steeped in classical symbolism. It's an example of beautifully sophisticated metalwork made of sheet iron with silver gilt and gold leaf details. Now, new reconstructions have highlighted what the helmet would have likely looked like in its original glory. Rajesh Gogna, a lecturer at De Montfort University, combined traditional silversmithing skills with ultra-modern CAD and 3D printing to bring it back to life.
So I chose to do this project because my research at the university entails a lot of research around technology and how handcraft processes work together historically and in a contemporary way. This project has challenged me to explore the technology in more depth and also bring the metallising process to the forefront for other researchers and graduates and students to take on board in their design practice. So my involvement in the project comes at a stage where all of the research prior to this by archaeologists and researchers is brought together into one format, and I've been able to convert that into a 3-dimensional print. And then we've been able to take it into the metal process. Reflecting on the original helmet which was found, it seemed like there was at least 3 craftspeople making different stages of the helmet. One would have made the bowl section, the other would have made the internal section, and another would have made the outer section and the motifs which were perhaps cast and repoussed. And I really like the fact that it's going to be seen in the museums by youngsters who can look back at 2,000 years of history and reflect on this amazing piece of artwork.
Meanwhile, Rome-based archaeologist Francesco Galluccio made another replica using more traditional techniques. Helmets like these were worn during elaborate cavalry displays known as hippica gymnasia and were designed to awe and impress. You can see examples of this in the Time Team episode Fighting on the Frontier from Series 12, which is available to watch now on the Classics channel. See the link in the description box below. And the original Hallaton helmet and its replicas can now be seen at Harborough Museum in Leicestershire, and it's well worth checking out. We all loved John Gator's visit to the Ness of Brodgar, and he's been back to the Scottish Isles, this time to Shetland, another wild, rugged landscape famous for its Shetland ponies and prehistoric and Nordic archaeology. Shetland is a cluster of islands 110 miles northeast of the Scottish coast and only 140 miles west of Norway, an influence that's left its mark over the centuries. Indeed, the name Shetland might just be Norse in origin. John paid a visit to St Ninian's Isle, which in the mid-20th century was the scene of a remarkable archaeological discovery.
Well, this is one of my favourite bays on Shetland. This is a tombolo, stretch of sand that connects to the island, and that's St Ninian's Isle. And it's been one of my favourite sites for years. I can remember first coming and just looking at the setting. Okay, so let's go and have a quick look. I mean, we've got a bit of sun shining, but it's still a bit breezy. But look at this location. Connected to the mainland by this spit of sand. I think it's the largest example in the UK. But what's so exciting about it is, on the headland over there, there's a little chapel. And there's several phases of the chapel, and I think the earliest was Pictish. And in 1958, there were archaeological excavations carried out. There was a local Shetland lad working on the excavations. There was this stone slab with a simple cross on it. He lifted the slab, and below it was an intact wooden box. And when they opened the box, they discovered the St Ninian's Isle treasure. 28 pieces, I think it was, of absolutely stunning metalwork. Unbelievable. Can you imagine being on an excavation in your youth and discovering that? I'm sure you'd become an archaeologist then, but I'm going to go for a walk on the beach.
Why the hoard was hidden here will likely never be known, although the fact that it was carefully concealed suggests an intention to return for it later. One possibility is that it was stashed away to protect it from a Viking raid across the North Sea.
You can see the chapel there, just above the cliffs, below the sheep. What a stunning location. The light here is just changing every second. It's like being in a desert here. The wind is just so strong, whipping up all the sand. And what I'm a bit worried about is the sea's coming in, and I don't think we're going to be able to get across in time, because otherwise we're going to be stuck on there for an hour or so. Still stunning, even when it's like this. You can just feel the power of the sea. And you can imagine why put a chapel in this location. You just wonder at the whole place.
The chapel's remote location isn't incidental. In winter or during stormy weather, the island is often completely cut off from the mainland. This plays into a wider tradition of early Christian chapels located on tidal islands across the British Isles that are only accessible in favourable conditions. These remote chapels are often associated with an early Christian missionary, in this case St Ninian, after whom the island is named, who was first mentioned by Bede in the early 8th century AD and closely connected with the southern Picts.
This is actually a good day weather-wise. You can imagine what it's like when it's a bit stormy.
The treasure hoard is now in the National Museum of Scotland, and finds include an array of early medieval silver, including brooches, and several examples of these mysterious objects that experts are yet to identify. We asked our Patreon members what they thought, and we received lots of great comments. But what do you think this object is? Let us know in the comments section below. If you'd like to know more about Scotland's past, from Pictish carvings to an ancient broch, there are several episodes on the Time Team Classics channel. Follow the link in the description box below. We had a great response to Richard Osgood's new book recently, and that got us thinking, what about a new segment, Book of the Month? And we've got a great title to start things off by old Time Team friend Guy de la Bedouille. And here's what Guy has to say.
I'm very excited to be able to tell you about my new book, which has literally just arrived. Now, it's published in the first few days of April 2024 by Abacus, and it's called Populous: Living and Dying in the Wealth, Smoke and Din of Ancient Rome. And this is a book I've been working on for several years now, actually, and it's a companion volume to a book I wrote during the pandemic called Gladius, which was all about the Roman army. Gladius: Living, Fighting and Dying in the Roman Army, and that came out in 2020. I'm very flattered to say that my friend Tony Robinson of Time Team Days very kindly wrote a quote for it. I hesitate really to say what he said, but it's very generous of him to say: a superb combination of wit, first-rate research and panache. Highly recommended. Well, I mean, that's Tony's view, so that's very kind of him. Whether it's actually going to stand up to that, I don't know. I approached the whole topic through various subsections. So, for example, there's the Domus et Familia, which means the household and families, the sex and passion, Cursus Honorum, which means the Roman career structure, the frightened city. Now, that's all about the incredible violence of the streets in Rome. It's a really dangerous place where you might have been knifed at any point, and people lived in real fear of that. You might also just be beaten up by soldiers, and that's actually worth my while bearing in mind or pointing out here that, of course, the Roman army and the emperors do find their way into this book because they're a very big part of the backdrop. But the soldiers are omnipresent, but this is really much more about all the people in Rome, and as far as the emperor's concerned, it's how they were perceived by the Roman people. So you've got the incredibly dangerous streets, which are full, for example, of the wealthy being carried through on their litters by slaves. There's freedmen jostling in businesses. There are slaves running about. These are all described by Roman poets, I might point out, or Roman authors. I haven't made any of this up. It all comes from ancient sources. The poet Martial talks all the time about the spectacular amount of noise. You could hear schoolmasters screeching at their children. You could hear the chink of coins on a money changer's table. One of the things about Rome is it was full of an absolute maze of back streets and junctions around which there were all these tenement blocks, apartment blocks in which people lived. And there are the guild headquarters. There's often backstreet baths run by freedmen just for sort of very local people. So there you go. I hope you found that interesting, and that I barely scraped the surface of what's in Populous, and Populous itself barely scrapes the surface of all the evidence that there is available on that period, which I know is of such enormous fascination to people all around the world.
And if Tony recommends it, it must be good. But what do you think about a regular book club? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below, and please do recommend any books or authors that you'd like to see featured in the future. Sticking with the Romans for a minute, the discovery of ancient barbed wooden spikes. This story takes us to a Roman camp in Bad Ems near Koblenz in Germany. It's great when new archaeological evidence corroborates with what we know from ancient texts, and this is a perfect example of that. During excavations, archaeologists from Goethe University discovered intriguing camp defences comprising barbed spikes of wood embedded into the ditches surrounding the camp. This distinctive form of wooden stakes was cited by Julius Caesar in his account of the Gallic Wars, in reference to the Battle of Alesia in 52 BC. But no extant examples have ever been discovered until now. While the examples at Bad Ems stem from a later period, about a century or so after Caesar, his account clearly described the same kind of defence. The site was previously believed to be an industrial site for smelting metals related to the limes border defences, but more recent analysis, initially spurred by parch marks spotted by a hunter and confirmed in aerial photographs and geophysics, in fact show that it was a huge military camp. The large curved lines in the field that on the face of it appear to be tyre tracks, perhaps from a tractor, are in fact the evidence of a double ditch around an encampment. This camp would have held up to 3,000 troops, complete with around 40 wooden towers. A smaller camp around 800 metres from the larger site held up to 40 soldiers. It was here that the barbed stake defences were discovered by the student team led by Frederick Orth of Goethe University on the penultimate day of excavations. The researchers have suggested the camp was set up there to protect the large silver mine that lay underneath the surface that was not fully exploited by the Romans. We'll keep a lookout for the monograph of this excavation being prepared for publication. It's a rare treat to be able to work on a World Heritage Site, but even more so when the site is thousands of miles away across the world. Time Team's very own geophys whiz, Jimmy Adcock, has travelled across the Atlantic to investigate an enigmatic site.
My name's Jimmy Adcock and I'm a geophys specialist at Guideline Geo. We manufacture, among other things, radar systems that have been used on Time Team episodes old and new. My own personal Time Team journey started some 20 years ago as part of John Gator's survey team, and since then I've worked on prehistoric sites, massive Roman forts, the gardens of Windsor Castle and even Shakespeare's house. So, this week I'll be travelling to Louisiana in the United States of America, not with a radar system, but with one of these, a resistivity tomography unit. I'm hoping to be able to help a team of archaeologists answer some questions about a mega prehistoric site called Poverty Point. Let me give you some stats. Poverty Point comprises of a 43-acre terraformed plaza that would have been filled with timber circles. Surrounding that plaza are 6 concentric semicircular ridges that are some 3/4 of a mile across. In turn, that is surrounded by a series of earth mounds, the largest of which is over 70 feet tall, 700 feet long and 650 feet wide. They think it would have been built of about 15.5 million baskets of soil, and that a large proportion of the mound may have been constructed inside of 3 months. The site has returned over 8,000 spearheads and countless stone artifacts, despite the fact there is no natural stone for miles around, and geological analysis has shown that some of the raw materials must have travelled hundreds of miles to get to Poverty Point. All of this is incredibly impressive, but made even more so when you realise that this was built by hunter-gatherers. There are no parallels in the world for a site of this scale being built by a community who were not harnessing formal agriculture. 3,500 years ago, hunter-gatherers formed what is effectively a city. People living and working and trading together. It's this uniqueness that allowed Poverty Point to gain World Heritage status from UNESCO in 2014. But why? Why build such a big site? And why position it where it is? That's a question that still hasn't fully been answered. A good argument is that for trade, it sits on the side of a river that links very easily to the Mississippi and therefore much of North America. However, a previous geophysics survey has revealed the presence of some small enigmatic mounds buried beneath the plaza. These are nothing like the scale of the mounds that surround the ridges, and the question mark remains as to whether they are built by human hand or whether they are natural. If they are natural, are they mud volcanoes? Now these things are bubbly, hot and smelly, and sometimes on fire because the gas that comes up is combustible.
You can see this is from outside and at the same depth within the anomaly. You can see all these dark bits.
And so imagine being a hunter-gatherer community wandering the Mississippi Delta, coming across oozing, smelly mounds of mud, possibly on fire. It would be very hard to explain, probably something you'd want to respect, and possibly a good enough reason to build the world's first hunter-gatherer city.
Well, we've made it. We're here at Poverty Point. It is chucking it down rain at the moment. I'm reliably informed the weather is going to get much, much better, warmer, hotter, sunnier, which will be very useful given how much work we've got to do here. So this is pretty cool. Effectively got the keys to a World Heritage Site. That doesn't happen every day, does it? Well, the sun has officially wrapped up work earlier than we have today. On the plus side, the light around here when the sun goes down is fantastic.
Wow, what a fascinating site. And we'll be sharing more of Jimmy's Poverty Point adventures with you in due course, including the results of the survey. So watch this space for more details. As you might have heard, Time Team has partnered with the National Trust for a very special excavation at Sutton Hoo this summer. This is the site of a huge ship burial and likely resting place of King Redwold of East Anglia. And I've got John Gator with me here. Exciting news, isn't it, John?
It's fantastic, Dani, that after, 2 years since we started doing the work there with Tim, and we got those amazing results to actually survey over the mounds, and then to investigate some of the areas to the north in the garden field. And the responses we've got, we just don't know what they are. And so to know that Time Team is now going to go and dig some of them. I was chatting to Helen the other day, and you can't imagine how excited she is. I mean, she's an Anglo-Saxon expert. I mean, what an opportunity for her. So having said that, she actually dug in the excavations 30 or 40 years ago. You wouldn't believe she was that old, would you? But I mean, she was there with Martin Carver. And so for her to be able to go back and do more, there can't be many archaeologists that can say they've dug at Sutton Hoo twice. It's such an important site in world archaeology. I mean, it really is exciting.
Thanks, John. World news now, and the discovery of the Emperor Diocletian's bath. Whilst it's been extremely chilly over here in the UK, this discovery takes us to warmer climes, to Croatia's second city, Split, on the Adriatic coast in the former Roman province of Dalmatia. Redevelopment at Split City Museum has revealed the remains of ancient bathhouses that were once part of Diocletian's palace. Diocletian was Roman emperor between 284 and 305 AD, and he's a fascinating character. He was born of low status and worked his way through the ranks of the military. In 286 AD, Diocletian made Maximian co-Roman emperor, with Diocletian governing the Eastern Roman Empire and Maximian governing the Western Roman Empire. Following ill health, Diocletian retired, and he's the first Roman emperor to voluntarily give up his power, famously, as the story goes, giving up his command to tend to his cabbages. Diocletian's palace, built not far from his home turf in Dalmatia, was commissioned as his retirement pad. Diocletian's palace is a great example of archaeology hiding in plain sight. It's remained largely intact for around 1700 years by being gradually absorbed into the city sprawl that grew up around it. By nature, any building work in this ancient city is bound to come down onto archaeology, but this discovery is particularly exciting because there's evidence of hypocausts, pools, mosaics, and even an oil and grape press. Perhaps the perfect place for Diocletian to relax after a busy day tending his cabbages. In the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles away from the other nearest habitation, is Easter Island, or Rapa Nui. This remote island is famous for its huge stone statues carved from rock made of volcanic ash, reaching 4 metres in height and weighing around 12.5 tonnes. The island's enigmatic past has long fascinated archaeologists, but one of the puzzles to really mystify researchers is Rongo Rongo, a system of glyphs whose meaning is now lost to time and is yet to be deciphered. Less than 30 examples of this script survive, carved onto wooden tablets and characterised by pictorial representations such as animals and human forms. The script's layout suggests that it's read by rotating the tablet 180 degrees at the end of each line. But it's not clear whether this is fully fledged writing or perhaps a memory aid as part of an oral tradition. There's debate around the origins of the script, whether its development was informed by outside contact or whether it was invented entirely independently by the people of Rapa Nui. The script has no known parallels supporting the idea of a unique invention. But because some of the tablets are made from wood from trees not native to the island, questions remain of a potential outside influence. Some of the tablets resemble the shape of an oar or paddle, giving rise to the theory that they may have been carved on oars from European or American boats, either through direct contact or through washing ashore as driftwood. The island is so remote that the first recorded contact from Europeans was only in the 18th century. New research led by Silvia Ferrara of the University of Bologna has sought to settle this debate. They radiocarbon dated 4 tablets held in Italy. Of these, 3 came back with a date of 19th century, but 1 gave a secure mid-15th century date which predates known contact from Europeans and supports the idea of an independent invention. The research has been published in an article by a team led by author Silvia Ferrara in the Nature journal. See the link in the box below. It's not every day that you get to excavate a medieval chateau. A 14th century castle has been rediscovered in the courtyard of a former hotel in Brittany, France. The Chateau Le Mine in Vannes was once the seat of John IV, the Duke of Brittany. Since 2023, the French National Institute of Preventive Archaeological Research has been excavating beneath the courtyard and has revealed in situ walls and beautifully crafted masonry, including grand stairways and door openings. Even parts of the wooden bridge have been preserved within the moat. Together, these elements reveal an imposing yet luxurious castle fit for a duke. As well as the structure itself, archaeologists have uncovered an array of wonderful finds. These include glazed floor tiles, keys, stunning pottery, and an unusual padlock, with many finds retrieved from the silted up moat. Through the excavations, archaeologists have pieced together a plan of the moated castle. Unlike most castles, which have typically been added to and altered over many generations, this castle is unusual in that it appears to have been made in one phase. This demonstrates the command that the Duke of Brittany must have had, including access to the finest craftspeople and engineers. On the way to a recent excavation, some of the team stopped off to visit Drake's Island off Devon's south coast, just a short trip from Plymouth Harbour, where Bear has been using photogrammetry to document the island's archaeology.
Time Team crew make their way out across Plymouth Sound. It's a short trip to the mysterious Drake's Island. Visible from land, the island has been off limits for many decades, with local people intrigued by what may linger on the old rock.
We're here, neither of us threw up because we're not very good travellers, so we're going to take that as a win for the day. Although we do have to come back.
Oh yeah, we do.
We'll be right.
The weather might have turned.
Don't say that, woman.
Originally known as St Nicholas Island, it is from here that Sir Francis Drake sailed in 1577 to circumnavigate the globe, a feat completed in 1580. It will be several hours until the boat returns at high tide. Their only means of escape pulls away from the jetty.
Here we are, Drake's Island. Let's see what we're going to see. I'm very excited. I've tried not to read up too much about this because I just want to experience it for itself.
Conflict and defence have defined the atmosphere and appearance of the island. Old stone archways lead up to higher areas through remnants of Napoleonic architecture.
So we've just come off the ferry. We've literally just got onto Drake's Island. It's crazy. I mean, the only thing that comes to mind for me is it's got Alcatraz vibes. It's English Alcatraz, I guess. I have no idea what we're going to find up here, and we're going up this already immediately foreboding staircase. And there's a sign here that says keep out. So let's not, and let's go in.
Several old buildings are clustered to the west side of the island, including the abandoned ablutions building, barracks block and officers' quarters. World War II was an active time on the island, as nightly Nazi bombing runs flattened areas of the city. These days, the empty ruins are the victim of time and decay, as the new island custodians valiantly uncover and clear more of the island than ever, a huge endeavour which is fascinating and quite eerie to experience firsthand. On the summit of the island, several huge objects are waiting to be 3D scanned. The RML's large rifle muzzle loading guns date from the 1870s and make an unusual sculpture garden. Bear also scans King George II's cannon from 1750, marked with the King's cipher. The intention is to create highly detailed models ready to be studied and added to the island's rich catalogue of virtual treasures. Further conflict saw the installation of gun batteries, tunnels and defences as the technology of war evolved. The island was also used as a prison during the Civil War, the death place of leveller Robert Lilbourne and John Lambert, imprisoned for the regicide of Charles I. Isolated islands are effective places of incarceration, but it is unknown how many were imprisoned or died on the island. To wander Drake's Island today is to walk through several centuries of history, where wood was replaced with stone and stone replaced with concrete. Sea mines, sentries and searchlights were installed to guard the naval docks of Plymouth. On the east side of the island, the casemates are gun positions of multiple eras, Napoleonic onwards.
Kind of looks like Corvid or something. Oh, it's on a wall now.
Oh, we found another one. We got a whole animal yet. I said to him, we're going to get you a finds tray already.
Each chamber is different to the last, with some period metal machinery and woodwork still evident to this day. The crew enter the island's infamous tunnels. The tunnels are a warren of passages from various time periods throughout the island's 400-year history of war and defence. Some are narrow brick passageways like rat runs from one room to the next, whereas others turn sharp angles to small rooms and ammo lifts. The largest chambers are the shell and cartridge stores, part of the underground magazines. The walls are painted with flames and grotesque imagery, a remnant of when the cavern-like space was used as a club with cinema and Friday night disco.
And this comes back out.
The arrival of the high tide meant it was time to leave the island. The pickup was most welcome. Time Team will return another day to continue capturing, recording and 3D modelling the many layers of history and heritage on Drake's Island.
In our last episode, Derek hinted at an interesting Bronze Age site he'd visited. So let's find out what he's been up to.
Hastings is a place name most associated with 1066 and William the Conqueror's audacious conquest of Anglo-Saxon England. But I'm here to look at something much, much older, where a team led by Cameron Ross have been investigating a rare Bronze Age site that includes evidence of both ritual and industry. Cameron, you've brought me up to a swimming pool today, but am I right in thinking there's something quite special here?
There is indeed. It's a Bronze Age burial mound, we believe. You can see with the burial mound coming up on the geophysics. We also have a ritual pit of some sort here, which is just behind, of course, full of water. But what we did is we took out a quarter of the ring ditch, which is cut out here, which is what you can see now. And within that ring ditch there, we've got 25 cremations within that ring ditch. We've got a huge amount of pottery that's come out of that ritual pit, all dated to Devil Rimbury ware, so Middle Bronze Age.
Cameron believes the mound has a main central burial area that was later surrounded by cremations. Although the team have only partially excavated this area, these discoveries are a bit of a surprise.
I saw someone busily doing geophysics earlier, and you've got this amazing plot here, but what on earth made you start working up here?
Well, I've been here for over 10 years. I'm an archaeologist, more specialising in modern conflict archaeology. And I just didn't think there was any need to look in this area. I was so caught up with my farming and working overseas and whatnot. But I employed Kevin from Hague to run some geophysics for me in Normandy. And he said to me, well, you've got all this land, let's just try it out here, of which he did. And day one, he found this.
But the burial mound and the ring ditch were not the only features to be identified in the geophysics. Cameron's site seems to be part of a much bigger, settled prehistoric landscape.
So this is one part of the field. The farm, the central part of the farm is the house in the middle there. This is our northern fields. We've got eastern southern fields down there as well. All of them have Bronze Age features of roundhouses and field systems and animal pens and whatnot. Further northern fields, we come up with this. And we've got, we excavated this feature here in the summer. And it looks exactly like a smelting furnace to me, or a casting furnace. We've got C14 date on that to Middle Bronze Age. And the fragment of Bronze Age pottery we did find does look similar to what we've been finding here. We dropped another trial trench on the top of this other feature here, and it's exactly the same as that. We haven't excavated that, but we've just opened it to see what it is. We've got another group here, and we've got several more down in this area as well, which all look very similar.
So how many acres in total do you reckon you've surveyed so far on this farm?
I think we've probably done about 80 acres so far.
And you've got funerary archaeology, you've got settlement archaeology, and you've got industrial archaeology. Now, I'd love to have a look about industrial material. Have you got anything we can look at?
We do. I've got a sample of everything that we found here, so I can show you.
Fantastic. Let's go and have a look.
Let's do it.
Characterising the excavated material is key to understanding the potential of this site. So I brought my portable X-ray fluorescence analyzer to help find out what the material may have been used for. And to find out the results of the XRF analysis, check out the extended coverage on Patreon.
This is an incredible site, and it's been an absolute privilege to be in this landscape, to see the excavations and to analyse that incredible material. And I, for one, cannot wait to see what the team find here next year.
And the latest news is this. A piece of the famous Bronzewell bucket has been discovered right here during our excavations at Sutton Hoo.
So this is the actual Broomswell bucket. It was found in Garden Field in 1986, but I gather from the inscription that we do know that it's 6th century because of the letter forms.
I mean, the thing about it is that the punch work is so delicate. And you've got this tiny annular punch picking out details, and then you have this almost free-form inscribed bodywork.
The rest of that handle is somewhere out
there.
It and while I'm not sure that the bottom would survive to be found, I'm pretty sure
a piece
that
of the handle should survive, and it would be very identifiable too.
Yes.
You couldn't miss that.
Throughout the dig, we've been looking for the source of the big metal spike in the trench.
I'm wondering, given it seems to be a perfectly circular, very strong metal signal, whether it's actually an object. Gradually, centimetre by centimetre, we're going down.
And yesterday, Justin and his team carefully... I can't speak, I'm too excited. They excavated the source for it, and wow, blimmin' wow, they got their rewards. It was great.
Oh, I can see a hand. Oh my word.
What a great find. The question, of course, is what happens next?
And there'll be more of this to come in the future.
Book of the month now, and this time we're joined by Time Team friend Brittany Hughes. Brittany has joined us on many episodes of Time Team over the years, and she's here to talk about her latest book, The Seven Wonders of the Ancient World.
Hello everybody, how lovely to see you on this platform. So I'm delighted to have been invited here to talk about my new book, The Seven Wonders of the Ancient World, if you can see that. So just a tiny brief intro. It's been very funny talking about this book because people have said to me, oh, how did you choose your seven wonders? And of course, I haven't got a massive ego. These aren't my seven wonders. These are the seven wonders of the ancient world as listed in ancient times back 2,200 years ago. So it is, you will all know it, but I just might as well run you through the Great Pyramid of Giza, or the Great Pyramids of Giza, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, wherever they were, whether or not they existed. So I have to say I found it really interesting talking to people about this book, and the one that they've all remembered is the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. You will all know it's the only one for which we don't have hard and fast archaeological evidence. So it could have been in Babylon, or these could have been in Nineveh, 100 miles to the north. It's the statue of Zeus at Olympia, the Great Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, the Colossus of Rhodes, and of course the Great Lighthouse of Alexandria. And why I think you might love this is that I've basically written the book as a journey between all seven, because we know that's what the ancients did. A lot of these lists existed basically to say these are the things that you need to see before you die. So we know that ancient pilgrims and tourists would go and travel between them all and boast about the fact that they'd seen them. So I've done a journey between them, and I've also been looking at the new archaeology around them and trying to work out not just why they were built or how they were built, but what they meant to the world that built them, and what wonder means both to us and to the ancients. So that is The Seven Wonders of the Ancient World. I hope you love it. It's taken me years and years and years and years and years to write it. Hopefully it won't take you years to read it. So have a look, and I'm going all around the country and indeed around the world talking about it. So thank you so much for letting me in to just sort of share a little bit of my excitement about it with you. See you soon.
The book has had the thumbs up from Lucy Worsley and Stephen Fry, no less. The Seven Wonders of the Ancient World is published by W&N Press and is available in bookshops now. And one of those wonders is particularly topical right now, as archaeologists working at the Pyramids of Giza have just announced the exciting discovery of some intriguing underground anomalies. The pyramids never cease to amaze, ever throwing up new insights. As technology gets better and more precise, non-invasive techniques are helping to map out the structures hidden beneath the sand. The project was led by Higashi Nippon International University, Tohoku University, and the National Research Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics in Egypt. The team carried out both ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography surveys at the Western Cemetery. The surveys identified an L-shaped anomaly up to 2 metres below the ground surface, possibly an earlier entrance that has since backfilled with sand, which in turn leads to a deeper and larger structure, about 5 to 10 metres below the ground. The researchers say we cannot determine the material causing the anomaly, but it may be a large subsurface archaeological structure. The findings have been published in the journal Archaeological Prospection, and we've included the link to that in the description box below.
You'll often hear me saying that the best discoveries are made during post-excavation, the process that takes place after the dig back in the lab. A time team evaluation might last 3 days, but often the research continues for many months, in some cases many years afterwards, as various specialists present their findings, informing future research. One technique that's increasingly valuable in understanding people from the past is isotope analysis, as our investigation of the Anglo-Saxon cemetery at Windfarthing in Norfolk demonstrates. Our investigation centred on the burial of a high-status lady whose grave goods suggested clear connections with the Kingdom of Francia on continental Europe. Dr. Sam Leggett of the University of Edinburgh explains how isotope analysis works.
So isotopes are based off the whole sort of premise that you are what you eat. So all of your food and drink and where your food and drink are coming from, when you metabolize, when you break down your food, and it then starts to replace and or make new bits of your body. So those sort of chemical signatures of the environment get locked into your bones and teeth. So it can tell you roughly about the environment and what people were eating, and roughly what the climate was like and what type of geology you were living on. But there's lots of areas in Europe which have the same geology and the same climate. So we can narrow it down to those broad parameters, but not this pinpoint on a map.
We sent a tooth and a rib sample of the lady to Dr. Leggett for analysis so that we could tell more about the lady's origins and life. Dr. Leggett's isotope analysis confirms that it's unlikely that the lady grew up in Winfarthing, but the results are consistent with a childhood spent in parts of Francia. Indeed, the geological signature matches the region around the Rhineland.
There's maps that I make that are sort of really educated mathematical guesses where the isotopes sort of match up to known water and geological isotopes. So you have some areas that are completely ruled out isotopically, and you'll see that they're sort of blank. And then there's areas that are shades of sort of salmony orange versus the green. The darker the green, the better the match. And that is just purely based on the isotopes and the statistics. And around Cologne, around the Rhine, there's big strips of green, which means, yes, it's an isotopic match. So I think we're building up this beautiful layer cake of here's some of the material that she was buried with. Here are her isotopes from her childhood. It all matches, which is very rare and very nice for me to kind of get that narrowing down, because isotopes can only take you so far, and it's when we contextualize it with the grave goods. And then, you know, we start to circle in with where the bowl might be from, where the pottery is, the coin pendants, and that narrows us down to areas along the Rhine. And it's quite clear that there are other parts of what then becomes Francia that are ruled out, which also is quite nice as well. So we are really looking at Alemannia and areas a little bit further north, up around Cologne and heading towards the North Sea, which kind of gives us the answer to how she hopped over to East Anglia.
The investigation really was a rescue project to help us to understand and characterise an early part of English history before the last remaining traces were swept away by the modern plough.
Once we have encountered a human burial, we have almost a duty to find out as much as we possibly can about them, to give them a kind of new life.
You have to sort of detach yourself when you're dealing with human remains to a certain degree to get the work done. But then when you have the data back and you're able to put this story together and talk to you all about what that all means, I think that is the great privilege that we have and the duty that we have to tell that story and put her life back together and bring that story to the fore, because without the isotopic information, we wouldn't know, is she local, is she not? How does she look compared to everyone else? It does show you when you have those tiny, tiny little bits of a person, you can tell an awful lot about their lives, which is the magical bit of what we do, I think. Some of the work Helena and I have done have kind of shown some of these amazing female connections that we're just really starting to pick apart in fine-grained detail, and Winfarthing will be a big part of that story.
And to hear an in-depth discussion on the post-ex, also featuring Professor Helena Hamerow and environmental analysis from Naomi Supal, please visit Patreon. So earlier I promised you some special guests, and we've got some Time Team royalty here for you. I'm joined by the one and only Sir Tony Robinson.
I am the royalty.
Tony,
how long is it since you and I have seen each other?
I think it's probably about 10 years.
I remember your first ever Time Team.
I know, so do I actually. You were amazing, because I was really nervous. I was really thrown in the deep end, wasn't I? And we had to film a find scene. And you said, don't worry, because there were cameras and people watching. And you said, don't worry, just imagine you're talking to me. And
Yeah.
I thought, well, that's the problem. I am not talking to Tony Morrison.
Look at this stuff I've got. So I've just arrived here, and this is the work I've got to do over the next 2 days. So this describes what I'm, the sort of thing I've got to do. Conservation chat, look at the Bromswell bucket. That is the totality of the information I'm going to have to go through for that interview. Boat, landing place, or what? That's another one. Felt required. Ground truthing, look ahead to next year. It's not much to go on, is it? We'll forget about that and just wander over there and ask some questions.
Does it feel like the old time team then?
Oh, very much. Yeah, I mean, it genuinely is. There is maybe 8 or 9 people here, including the gentleman behind the camera, Neil, who I've known for years and years and years. But a lot of the people are new too. And even older than that, if you stay with me, is this.
Oh, yes.
Professor Mick Aston, the late Professor Mick Aston, still looking on at us,
No.
giving us his blessing.
Yes, absolutely. What's been your favourite bit about this site so far then?
Sounds ridiculous, being here and being allowed to dig. To me, this site is more significant than Stonehenge. It's more significant because one of the problems with Stonehenge is you don't find that much stuff to go with it. I know microbiologists will say, oh, there's loads and loads and loads of stuff. Well, yeah, tiny stuff. But you get good stuff, quite frankly, here. And it shimmers with life and curiosity, this place. Yes. And so the privilege of being allowed to excavate in the field next to where the boat burial was found. We've got the 1939 dig, we've got the one in the 60s, the one in the 90s, the one in 2000. All of them incredibly carefully managed and very limited, most of them, in their aspirations. And now we're allowed to come here too. And I find that...
It's something else, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is. It's been really lovely catching up with you. Thank you.
One of the big fixtures on the UK archaeology calendar is Current Archaeology Live, a conference and awards ceremony showcasing the best of British archaeology. This year's event was held at the end of February at the University College, London, and just happened to feature Time Team's very own Dr. John Gaiter as the keynote speaker.
Welcome, John, to the stage.
So we went along to catch some of the action.
Tony Robinson and geophysics boffin John Gaiter examined the achievements of geophysics and put the latest technology to the test. Can it distinguish between a bike and a toilet? 18 years I'd been doing geophysics. A chance to have an hour-long programme to explain how geophysics works, and this is the level that we're portrayed at.
Lots of old Time Team friends were in the running for awards. Congratulations to the Ness of Brodgar for its double whammy, winning the Research Project of the Year award, with site director Nick Card announced as Archaeologist of the Year.
Well, I'm a bit of an imposter here. My second persona is Nick Card. Not Nick Card once, but Nick Card twice.
And it was actually a hat trick for Orkney, with the Knoll of Swandrow winning Rescue Project of the Year.
No, really, really pleased, because it is such a recognition of rescue archaeology, of Orkney archaeology, of archaeology from Bradford.
Book of the Year was Doggerland by Luke Amcroos and Sasha van der Vaart Verschoof. Big congratulations to all the nominees, highlighting the wonderful wealth of archaeology going on at the moment. A stone disc has been discovered in Italy, which, according to researchers, has been intentionally carved with a map of the stars. The stone disc, reported to be about the size of a car tyre, was discovered at Castiglieri di Rupin Piccolo, a hill fort with its origins in the Bronze Age going through to the Iron Age, in Trieste Karst in Italy, which is close to the border with Slovenia. Now, you might be thinking, are these not just random chisel marks? Well, this has been put to the test by researchers in an article published in Astronomical Notes. There are 29 marks on the disc, which appear to have been made
intentionally with the use of a chisel whose point is about 6 millimetres wide. A similar chisel was found in the wider area, providing evidence of the type of tool that could have been used to make such indentations. The indentations are thought to accurately match specific asterisms or areas of constellations. On one side of the disc is the tail of Scorpio, Orion's belt and the Pleiades, and on the other side of the disc it's thought to depict Cassiopeia. Of the 29 marks, one can't be identified as a star within those constellations, and the authors suggest perhaps this represents a failed star or a supernova that was visible in the sky at the time. Further research might prove this. There are other precedents for ancient sky maps in Europe. The Nebra sky disk, discovered in Germany in 1999, dates all the way back to the Bronze Age, to 1600 BC. Interestingly, it incorporates tin and gold all the way from Cornwall, and it's thought also to depict the constellation of the Pleiades. Naturally, some critics are sceptical of the indentations on the stone disc and view the findings as selectivism or confirmation bias. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments section below.
You might remember a while ago that Derek and Lawrence joined a team from Bournemouth University to investigate a medieval shipwreck laden with Purbeck stone. Well, they've rejoined the crew again for a special dive to bring back 700-year-old stone slabs to the surface.
I kind of love that barge. It looks like it shouldn't float.
After a short journey through Poole Harbour, we've reached the wreck site.
Looks like Tom's on the move. Here he goes. Imminently, it's coming up.
Well, imminently, yeah. Imminently is.
How's it looking down there, as he said?
He doesn't talk a lot, Tom, does he?
Because there it is. You can see it.
And we'll be sharing that full story with you very soon. News now from Guatemala in Central America, where analysis has revealed likely ritual offerings of tobacco infusions in pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. The site of El Baúl in Cotzumalapa, one of the largest late classical cities in southern Mesoamerica in Guatemala, dates back over 1,000 years ago, broadly from 650 to 950 Christian era. Over the last 20 years, archaeologists have been excavating at the site, revealing huge stone-faced structures and gradually piecing together the city plan. The excavations carried out between 2006 and 2007 concentrated on an area where lots of obsidian debitage had been found to see if the nearby buildings were related to the obsidian industry. During the excavations, they unearthed a range of beautifully produced and well-preserved vessels with unexpected connotations. Professor Oswaldo Chinchilla of Yale University, who conducted the excavations, tells us more.
And then when we started digging under the floors of these buildings, there were all these deposits, all these caches with vessels. And it turned out to be quite unusual because basically in every excavation unit, we would find one or two of these deposits, which is a lot. More than we would consider normal, more than we have found anywhere else at Cotzumalguapa.
These distinctly shaped vessels, likely holding liquids, had been deliberately deposited in the ground, some with an inverted bowl as a lid, suggestive of a ritual offering.
The vessels were buried intentionally, and we should think that this was done in the context of religious rituals. So, and we have some analogy for this also from ethnographic sources in Mesoamerica, where people do different kinds of rituals and then deposit the objects or materials, or very often it's about food, food that's offered to deities.
Even more curious, some of the vessels contained a single sharp obsidian blade.
One question that I was interested in was to see whether there would be traces of blood, because of the obsidian blades. My hunch was that they may have been used for bloodletting because this is a ritual practice that we know about in Mesoamerica, and that and also because the blades were new.
However, recent post-excavation analysis of the residues within the pots has now revealed their original contents. Of the 7 pots tested, unusually, 3 showed traces of nicotine. It's thought this trace signifies a tobacco infusion, perhaps part of an offering to deities, similar to other parallels of food offerings, such as maize and cacao, or botanicals with supposed medicinal or therapeutic qualities. This is consistent with other archaeological evidence on site. The beautifully intricate stonework at Kotzmalwapa includes the bust of a figure, possibly a ruler, clearly adorned with what appear to be tobacco leaves, suggesting an important symbolism of the plant. What's more, the vessels were discovered near sweat baths, which are thought to be associated with childbirth and gods connected to midwifery. So the vessels and their contents might be connected in some way, perhaps as a purification ritual. Professor Adam Negrin of the City University of New York, who carried out the residue analysis, tells us of the wider potential of this technique in building a more holistic picture across the wider region.
One can certainly imagine as these studies continue that these data points will start showing up and populating the Mesoamerican region, looking at different cultural uses and actually putting a little bit better into context how tobacco is used within the region and then broadly. So that's something we imagine over time as residue analysis perhaps becomes a part of standard archaeological practice. There are certainly other plants that we would expect to find in vessels. In addition, it'd be curious to know other plants which were used within a ritual context. This is just the beginning. We assume that as more sampling increases at these sites, we will be able to create a broader map of plant use in relation to vessel form and function.
Now here's Lawrence to tell us about a fundraiser that he's involved with.
Thanks, Dani. So I've got some really exciting news. At the start of September this year, myself and Harry Manley from Bournemouth University are going to be undertaking a 250-mile bike ride as part of the cycle from Waterloo station in London to the site of the Battle of Waterloo in Belgium. And this is all in aid of charity. So the Waterloo Uncovered charity, which uses archaeology to train and rehabilitate ex-service personnel. We're going to be cycling for 3 days. We're going to be recording our adventure for you all to enjoy afterwards, but also we're going to be raising money for a really important charity. So if you'd like to get behind us, we're hoping to raise £6,000 and you can find details below.
Next up, ancient Gaelic writing has been found carved onto a stone in the Midlands garden. Whilst doing some weeding in his garden during lockdown, Coventry resident Graham Senior discovered a stone carved with markings on it. Now, he initially recorded the find with the Portable Antiquities Scheme, which is a national database for logging finds found around the UK. And recently it's been confirmed that these markings on the stone are actually an ancient type of script known as Ogham or Ogham that first originated in Ireland in the 4th century Common Era. The script is rare and unusual because it's not made up of letters of the alphabet, but a series of lines, a little bit like a barcode, that run off a central stem line to the left and the right of it. And it's even more unusual because it's a 3D script. Originally, it was carved into stones using the edge of stones as the stem line, with the script going off to the left and the right around the stone. And it's thought it developed in this way because when carving onto wooden objects such as sticks or twigs, if you want to write a message on a twig, it's a lot easier to carve vertical lines into it than it is to try and write letters of the alphabet. The inscription has been initially translated by Professor Catherine Forsyth of the University of Glasgow, and it's thought that the first part of the inscription contains a person's name. Another example of Ogham script was discovered by Time Team's very own Matt Williams during the excavation of a chapel on the Isle of Man, and we've put the link to that episode in the description box below.
Believe it or not, these faint marks could belong to one of the earliest forms of writing in the British Isles, Ogham.
Ogham script is usually found in Ireland and the western coast of Britain, including Scotland, Wales, Devon and Cornwall. So quite how this new discovery ended up in a Midlands garden remains a mystery. The stone is on display at the Herbert Art Gallery and Museum in Coventry until April 2025.
News from the Amazon in South America. The discovery of a network of settlements in the Opano Valley area of Ecuador is causing a rethink of human history in the area. The discovery, led by Professor Rostain, was made with the help of LiDAR. Now, this is a technique of scanning landscapes from above using laser beam technology. And digitally, you can remove the dense tree canopy so that it reveals hidden features below. Around 300 square kilometres were surveyed, revealing 5 large urban centres and 10 smaller settlements, all packed with structures and streets. In fact, there were 6,000 earth platforms discovered. And in between the settlements, there's evidence of agricultural fields and water drainage. And connecting the centres and the settlements together are a network of roads. All this demonstrates a sophisticated culture. Radiocarbon dates suggest that the settlements began around 2,500 years ago and lasted for 1,000 years. The results were published this month in the journal Science by Professor Rostain and his team. Congratulations on the discovery.
Last month, we asked you what you thought about a regular book of the month, and the answer was a resounding yes. So it's back, and this month we've got a fantastic title lined up for you. It's Doggerland, The Lost World Under the North Sea by Luc Amkreutz and Sacha van der Vaart for Schoof. Doggerland was the worthy winner of the Current Archaeology's 2024 Book of the Year. It faced off some stiff competition, so we thought we'd better take a closer look. Doggerland is an extraordinary story of an ancient world in the North Sea, submerged under shallow waters between the coastlines of Britain, the Netherlands and Denmark. Doggerland was a vast area of dry, fertile land crossed by major rivers, inhabited by huge animals and early humans. It's a story of almost 1 million years of human occupation, a rich tapestry of early hominid footprints, Neanderthals hunting woolly mammoths and rhinos, of the first modern humans in Europe making complex tools and art, of hunter-gatherers adapting to climate change and rising sea levels, and the mother of all tsunamis that put that world beneath the waves. We caught up with Professor Luc Amkreutz from the National Museum of Antiquities in the Netherlands and asked what we might expect to find in the book.
Okay, so this is the book. This is the English version of the Doggerland book, and what's in it is actually the most complete introduction for a bigger public audience by scientists of what we have discovered over the past years. So it tells you a bit about, in different parts, about the history of Doggerland, the earliest inhabitants, so really the pioneers that lived there, which actually were on the coast of Haysbro, where we have the oldest footprints in Europe, and then we enter the land of the Neanderthals. And the thousands of years they inhabited this area. You know, if you want to learn more about this landscape, which is in front of our coast, which is just a shallow sea, but was in the sea for most of the past 1 million years, it's a good introduction, and it's also free to read online. So everybody should have access.
And what was it that drew you to studying this lost world under the North Sea?
Our museum has also for decades been involved in documenting the finds that come from Doggerland. So it was already on my list, and we had a small working group with which we sought out actually new people that discovered things on the beaches or in the fishing nets. And from that actually sprang the idea, there is so much now, including the finds that came from the UK. Wouldn't be interesting to do an exhibition on it, especially since I work in a museum. That seems like a logical thing to do. So we got it into the schedule, and then that became a major thing. And we had the exhibition in 21, and it's still traveling the country now. So it's been to 5 or 6 smaller museums, and everywhere people like it. Apparently, it's a topic that lands really well with a bigger audience. It has the same allure of an area, a landscape which is lost, which you can't get to. And of course, we are dealing with mobile hunter-gatherer communities, but we're also dealing with almost a million years of human habitation in an area which at its largest was 300,000 square kilometers. So it's huge. It's like this huge piece of the puzzle in Europe, which is missing from our history books. It's in the center of Europe, and we know hardly anything about it. We're just scratching the surface right now, which is really exciting. But I hope to create more awareness for this.
It's great that you've made this book available online for free so it can be accessed by a wider audience.
Everybody should be able to, to take in new discoveries, and to at least online, but sometimes also through downloads, be able to have access to the full material. So so that is important to us as a museum, because we also think it's a collection, it's also information, it's also science that is, it is done with public money, so it should also be available to a wider audience. So that is very much what we believe in.
The book is published by Sidestone Press and is available in bookshops now. It's also, as mentioned, available online, following the link in the description box below. And if you'd like to find out more about this lost prehistoric landscape, then check out the Time Team Classics special, Britain's Stone Age Tsunami, on Patreon. It's that time of year when students around Britain are out in the field honing their excavation skills. Students from the University of Leicester, led by staff including Time Team's Dr. Philippa Walton, have been out excavating a Roman villa in Leicestershire. So let's see what they've been up to.
This is it then, folks.
Okay.
Exciting. Have you got a villa?
Hope so.
Oh, I hope so. Well, there you are.
Oh, wow.
Fantastic.
Right.
So that's the magnetic data of the whole field.
It's busy.
And yeah, it's not just a villa. You've got a whole complex of things.
Yeah, there's just so much more than was on the aerial photographs. It's really giving you an idea of what the whole archaeological landscape looks like, rather than just the villa on its own and a few potential prehistoric features too.
But the main target in this trench was one, to look at an area of what we call high resistance.
Well, we're here because we've got a newly discovered Roman villa, and this is giving us an opportunity to have a student training excavation to learn more about the site and to teach the students how to excavate.
Hi, I'm Chris. I am studying archaeology at the University of Leicester, and I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on and properly doing archaeology in the soil itself. So we're finding lots of mostly tessera, little floor pieces. We found lots of those, and quite a bit of pottery and bone, especially down this section here.
Hi, I'm Isabel. I'm studying Archaeology and Ancient History BA at the University of Leicester, and I'm really enjoying our excavation. I'm enjoying using the mattock to get through gravel quite quickly, and I've been really enjoying doing the cleaning of the finds and seeing what we've got on site.
Well, so far in the two trenches immediately behind me, we've found the remains of a large winged Roman villa, about 70 metres long, so really quite substantial country house. Leicestershire in most of the Roman period is part of the rural landscape of Britain, and what we see during the Roman period is the development of wealthy rural estates with these big Roman villas at their heart. But up until recently, we've not really known much about them.
We've got on this side here, the northern side, some remaining wall that's still in situ. And then just this side here, we've gotten to the bottom of what used to be where the wall was before it was rubbed out and then backfilled.
So over here, we opened up what we thought would have been a well, but upon further excavation, we reached sand at the bottom. So it's not a well because water would have went right through it. No dating material has actually come out of whatever this pit is supposed to be, but we do see right over here we have some recycled Roman tile that has been used in the construction of the well, or the pit, whatever it might be.
It's great to see the field school in action, and we'll be following more on that excavation in the future. So now it's time for Book of the Month, and we've got a very special one lined up for you this time. It's Beowulf. Now, this isn't a new book, it's a 1,000-year-old book, although it was originally being spoken a long time before that. And given that we're at Sutton Hoo, we're sat on Mound 1 of what was perhaps King Redwill's final resting place, we thought it'd be quite appropriate to discuss Beowulf. I'm joined by Dr. Sam Newton, who's an expert on Anglo-Saxons and on Beowulf. Can you give us a bit of a synopsis about what this story is about?
If you boil down the story of Beowulf, it's about a great hero called Beowulf, who's something of a Superman, but mortal, who fights three terrible monsters, really scary monsters. First of all, he fights Grendel, who is the precedent for all the nasty monsters right down to modern film. Alien, Predator, they all take something from Grendel. And then after he defeats Grendel in a great wrestling exorcism, he then defeats Grendel's mother, who's almost as terrifying, and thus achieves great things in his early life. And then the narrative fast forwards, and it's the only end that can match for a great hero like him. It's a dragon. These are the wonder tale aspects of the poem. And it's the first dragon of English literature. He's absolutely great. Perfect description of him. Beautifully retold by Tolkien. So that's your basic threefold hero monster killing story. But interwoven into the gaps between that are the heroic legends of the old English homelands and their neighbours, the Danes, a bit further away the Swedes. In other words, from that perspective, Beowulf is a history onto the prehistory of the English. It's really one of the great epics of world literature, where the three hero monster combat scenes become three moments in an idealised mortal life. You know, youthful achievement, having not had a good start, goes on to mature, and then as an old man he still goes out fighting and never shows fear, brave to the last.
It was it was written down, wasn't it, about 1,000 years ago, but yeah, it's older than that.
That's it. That it was composed as we have it in the 8th century in writing, but drawing on much, much earlier poetic traditions which reach right back to the 6th, even into the 5th century. And our poet clearly he loved that old poetry, the inherited traditional alliterative poetry from the oral tradition, and yet he knew how to write. And so you've got this wonderful alchemy of the two media thriving together.
So for me, what's really interesting about Beowulf is how it relates archaeologically, because the 1939 excavations here at Mound 1, it kind of is quite similar to some passages in Beowulf, isn't it?
Yes, the opening movement culminates with a magnificent account of a royal ship funeral, which in so many ways brings to life the bare bones of the archaeology here and the events entailed by the archaeology. And it makes the whole magic of ship funeral make sense. And the idea of crossing the boundary between worlds, which is one of those powerful and simple metaphors that everybody would understand.
So the passage in Beowulf that's really kind of ties it all together is that bit where they describe the funeral, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. It's so touching, it's so moving. It reads like an authentic account of a real ship funeral.
So tell us about that.
Well, you have right from the start. There at Hooder stood Hringed Stéphen, the beringed bow of the noble's ferry was ready to take him across the boundary between worlds. It reads a bit like the Grey Havens at the culmination of the epic of Lord of the Rings. And the laying in of the treasure, fortune fetched from far and wide, is exactly what we have here. East Mediterranean connections, Celtic world connections, and not above all the beautiful gold and garnet treasure, where the garnet comes from, it appears, from India.
So in a way that some passages from this passage from Beowulf could almost be describing what happened here.
Yeah, well, it certainly describes the ideal behind what happened here. And as if what happened here and the poetry composed, the eulogy for Radwold and composed about this event, would have been available to the poet to retell his story and apply it to the legendary founder of the kings. As I say, a kind of mythic precedent.
In a sentence, why should people read Beowulf?
The first epic of English literature is the roots of national identity for all the English-speaking peoples. There at Hooder stood, Hringed Stevna, easy and outfoos, Avalanches far, our led and thar.
Perhaps an Easter-related story for you now. A 1,700-year-old chicken egg has been discovered with the liquid yolk and egg white still inside it. The egg, which was laid way back during the Romano-British period, was discovered during excavations of a Roman site in Aylesbury. A recent scan revealed that the contents of the egg were still intact. A spokesperson for Oxford Archaeology said, "It is absolutely amazing. It may be the oldest egg of its type in the world."
Since last month, we've had the release of our latest excavation, a community archaeology project in the heart of Devon's South Hams. Working with the people of Modbury, we traced everything from Civil War skirmishes through to the ancestral history of American hat makers, the Stetsons. We also considered the prehistoric origins of the settlement and a bit of modern archaeology here. We even reunited a long-lost toy soldier with its owner. Modbury Memorial Hall served as our headquarters during the excavations, and so it only seemed fitting that we returned there for the episode's world premiere. Tim Taylor and I were delighted to return to Modbury to join with local residents for a very special screening.
Now is the month of May, when merry lads are playing. La 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 la, la 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 la.
Modburyans, Tontine Tellers, it is an honour for me to welcome you to this event here in the Modbury Memorial Hall.
It's an amazing turnout on a pretty horrendous afternoon of all this rain. So yeah, there's a lot of interest here tonight.
Everyone's really excited. Yeah, it's really good.
So, without further ado, it's an absolute honour to be able to introduce to you this evening Tim Taylor, who is the series producer.
This is just the start. I think Modbury is a fascinating town and there's a lot more to be done. So anybody who's got a nice garden out there, just be aware that we're going to be coming to visit you, so don't mow your grass too neatly. It's surprising what those test pits can produce, and it was a joy to see the engagement of young people in those test pits. And if you can find one or two people who are interested and say, how do we carry this on? We'll try and help you if we can. So thank you very much, Modbury. You are a great community, and keep it going, and I hope you enjoy the film. Thank you.
On the Priory, yes, well, that kind of disappeared completely. So we've got test pits for that, but we also want to have a look at the stand.
Without you guys, without the community of Modbury, none of this would have happened. So I'd really love it if you could give yourselves all a round of applause because you've been amazing. Thank you. Well, that's it for this month. As usual, all our 3D models featured in this month's episode can be found over on our Patreon channel, along with extended interviews and much more. So thank you for watching. Please do remember to subscribe to this channel and press the notification bell to receive all the latest updates. Well, that's all from me for now, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Join Time Team on Patreon to access exclusive 3D models, masterclasses and behind the scenes insights.